Je vais vous raconter juste une toute petite histoire qui nous amène ici, pour que tout le monde comprenne bien qu'est-ce qui nous relie maintenant qu'on est tous là. En mai 2012, moi je faisais un voyage à Buenos Aires avec Mauro Saracchian, un ami argentin qui vit plus en Belgique aujourd'hui. Et on se rendait un lundi soir dans un centre culturel qui s'appelle le Connex, Centro Cultural Connex. Peut-être que certains d'entre vous sont passés par là s'ils voyageaient en Argentine. Et on y allait pour assister à quelque chose. On nous avait dit qu'il y avait quelque chose d'assez incroyable là-bas. Et ce qu'on voit là-bas, on rentre dans ce centre culturel, c'est qu'il y a entre 2 et 3 000 personnes qui sont là. Il y a sur scène une grosse quinzaine de percussionnistes. Face à eux, un directeur, un espèce de chef d'orchestre. Et pendant 2 heures, ces percussionnistes vont faire de la musique improvisée. Et ces 2 à 3 000 personnes, elles vont être là pour se rencontrer, pour danser, pour des tas d'autres raisons. En réalité, ce qui se passe là, c'est pas un concert. En apparence, ça y ressemble, mais c'est pas vraiment juste un concert, c'est un rendez-vous. C'est un rendez-vous qui se produit chaque lundi. Quand j'y suis moi, chaque lundi, ça se produit en fait déjà depuis 6 ans, depuis 2006. C'est un phénomène culturel et social, un truc incroyable, incontournable maintenant si vous passez par là-bas. Moi, je vis ça de manière assez brute, presque brutale. Je découvre ça. J'y allais pas pour rien, j'y allais pour voir ça. Je savais que ça existait. Et dans les jours qui suivaient, je passais quelques jours à étudier le langage gestuel dont vous avez vu les possibilités maintenant avec nos élèves. Je passais quelques jours à étudier ce langage avec le monsieur qui l'a créé, qui est Santiago Vazquez, qui est là aujourd'hui avec nous. Attendez un petit instant avant de lui faire l'ovation qu'il mérite. Donc voilà, un phénomène culturel incroyable. Je passe quelques jours à travailler avec Santiago. Alors l'énergie de Santiago plus l'énergie du lundi qu'on avait vu et qu'on retourne le lundi d'après évidemment, ça ne peut que voyager, ça ne peut que se partager. Donc on rentre avec ça, avec Mauro Saracchian, on démarre Sysmo ici avec cette énergie et cette inspiration qu'on a eue de là-bas. Je vous propose de vous joindre à mon enthousiasme pour accueillir sur scène aujourd'hui le très grand monsieur, le compositeur multi-instrumentiste argentin, dont le travail nous inspire tous les jours depuis maintenant 6 ans avec Sysmo. S'il vous plaît, faites beaucoup de bruit pour accueillir Santiago Vazquez.
Bonsoir, bonjour, como se dice. I am going to speak in English because I don't speak French, but thank you very much. Thanks, Agustin. Thank you, Sysmo and Sysmito and all of you for being here and for bringing me here to talk about this experience, incredible, unbelievable, that I am living this last 12 years or so, and drove me here to this place where I can see so many people playing with this language and with this idea that I once envisioned it like in a kind of a dream, but now it's really not a dream. It's big and it's containing the dreams of many other people, so I am really, really happy and amazed for all this. I wanted to tell you a little bit of what was the inspiration or how was the genesis of this idea. I am a musician, I am a drummer, and originally I played really when I was a kid. I played all the stuff in my kitchen and in the living room in Buenos Aires and in Spain, in Spain where I lived when I was from 5 years to 12 or to 11 because of the Argentinian dictatorship. So my family had to move to Spain. And well, playing just all the stuff and believing it was a drum set, because I didn't have a drum set. I was like 7 years old. And I recorded these improvisations I did with books and cans, kitchen cans and cassette covers and, well, anything I could find with chopsticks. And I singed melodies and recorded that melodies on a Walkman cassette. Some of you know that. What is that? That reveals my real age. So I was really into music, improvising since the very beginning, just like a kid plays with any toy, and improvising rhythms with the timbre of the things I had in my house, and improvising melodies and recording that. And I loved the sound of the recording after that. The sound changed somehow on the recording. And also I recorded with the speakers on, so I could hear the speakers coming, what I was singing or playing a little bit late of the speakers because of the tape that was running, play, record, and then play. So just a slap delay, it's called in production. So later I finally could get a drum set and a teacher, and I started to play drums as a way of living. After some years, of course, it was not immediate, and studied drums just believing I was going to be a jazz drummer or something like that. And I wanted to play with some musicians I admired enormously in Argentina and maybe in the world, like Egberto Gismonti or people like that in Brazil. So I studied just to be a drummer and a composer, because these melodies I sung, I improvised, were really important to me, and I started to learn composing, piano, and other stuff around composing, conducting as well. But conducting I studied mainly because I wanted to make arrangements of my compositions and be able to conduct the musicians in the studio to make them sound as I hear in my mind. So I understood I had to learn how to conduct classical musicians. But I never thought I was going to be a conductor. And then I made many projects playing drums and percussion, most of the times related with improvisation. And at some point, I felt that drum set was not enough. I mean, I wanted to go more into timbre, different sounds, and just go back to where I started when I was a kid, just playing with sounds. So I started to learn other percussion instruments, but I must say I am not the traditional percussionist. I don't come from a tradition. I didn't start learning Afro-Cuban music or Afro-Brazilian or any other tradition, Malinke or African, but really because I wanted to play sounds and rhythm and melodies. So at some point in a trip in Brazil, I met this instrument, berimbau, that many of you can know from before, and I just bought a tourist berimbau, like not a very good instrument, and I took it home. I didn't even know how to hold it. So I started doing things like this. But then when I went back to Brazil, I understood that that was not the way it should be played at all. They were not angry, they were very friendly, and they, in a very good way, told me that berimbau is supposed to be played like this, standing up. So it's beautiful rhythmic playing to accompany capoeira, dance and martial art from slaves in Brazil, but it lacked notes for me. So I just started combining both things. And things like that. Thanks. But at some point, I was with this instrument improvising with these notes, and I had a Porta Studio. Porta Studio is a small, very old machine that records into tape 4 tracks. Now in any computer you can record about 100 tracks, but at that point 4 tracks was a lot. And then I started recording this thing and playing with these notes, creating harmonies with the berimbau. And at some point I felt the need to organize this, not into compositions, but really improvising harmonies, but with some kind of sense. So I created this kind of harmonic systems to control where the notes go in the berimbau in every track, and then I recorded to myself in a track, in one of those 4 tracks, I recorded things like, now up, a second, minor second, 1, 2, 3, 4, now. And then I waited for a minute, now up, major fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4, now. And then when I recorded, I hear that instructions and I obeyed those instructions and I did something. But then I met this amazing musician called Butch Morris, who was conducting a band of improvisers, conducting with signs, with a baton and a hand. He did signs to conduct this band. I was supposed to play on the band, but I had a gig with another artist, a very big, famous artist in Argentina, so I couldn't participate in the band, but I could see the rehearsal. And I was really interested on this way of communicating ideas through signs to the musicians, because we could improvise music and I could tell the musicians to do things without disturbing the sound, of course. So it was not immediate, but I thought it was a good idea. It's a helpful tool to use words, but instead of talking, using hands. So to use signs. And then after some months, I thought I could investigate those harmonic systems I was creating for the berimbau. I could create a group to explore those signs, those systems, and name the systems with signs, like harmonic system, like this. I did some different systems. And I created this kind of big band, orchestra or chamber orchestra, called Colectivo Heterofónico de Improvisación, which was a very avant-garde group, experimental, free jazz, contemporary, everything but rhythmic. And well, as I told you, I started doing rhythm and melodies and timbre, but rhythm was very important to me. And after 3 years of playing with that group, I felt the tool was fantastic, but I needed to work into the rhythmic aspect much more. And the problem with improvisation was that normally improvisation is supposed to be a way of course, being yourself, being true to you, to who you are, being awake, all these things that are true. But it's kind of opposite to the idea of repeating things. Like improvising is always new, always has to surprise you. You have to be always awake for the variations and explore. And so in the world where I came from, improvisation was not really about repeating things. But for my feeling, rhythm is not what would normally in many schools teach us. I have been taught that rhythm is about the length of the notes, while the pitch is about the pitch, the height of the notes, the vertical aspect versus the horizontal aspect, where the rhythm is things are longer or shorter. And for me, it has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with that. For me, rhythm is really the circular aspect of things. So it has to do with repetition, with cycling things, and what do you feel when something is cycled, and if you change it, but still relating to a cycle, not to just the length of things in time. So I understood that to work with rhythm, I needed to work improvising with rhythm. As I understood rhythm, it was not to make signs, to make things change in the improvisation, but it was really about how to make cycles change, how to make variations into something that is being repeated. And so I didn't know how to do this, because Butch Morris, when I saw his orchestra, it was also free jazz, how to call it, avant-garde music, nothing repeated really, and it was not danceable at all. I liked it, but I know that many of the people in this place would not like it really, and it's not very popular because it's that kind of music that is not really intending to be popular. It's just about exploring textures and exploring energies and other things. So, well, at some point, I understood that I had to work with repetition as a main thing. And I have to say also, in different trips I did when I was younger, playing in tours and also tourist, I saw different percussion groups around the world, that enormous percussion groups like Olodum, like Escolas do Samba, Mangueira, many others in Rio or in Bahia, like in Uruguay, the Candombe comparsas, in Morocco, where I have been many times also, or the Isawa groups or the Gnawa groups. So I have seen all these percussion groups being the center of the community, the center of a public space where the community can meet, can join together, and can dance to the rhythm, and dance to the rhythm that they consider their rhythm. They consider the rhythm is theirs, is their culture, and they belong to this rhythm and to this culture. So this creates a very special moment in which the community can be really incorporated. I don't know how to say it. It becomes corporal. It becomes body. It's not just an idea. Everybody's there. Rich people, poor people, all kinds of. It's really the body of our community around the percussion. And I realized that percussion has that role in many cultures. I could say maybe in all cultures. And in Buenos Aires, we didn't have a tradition of percussion so strong to do that. Buenos Aires music is very well known. The tango music has no percussion. So there is not a strong percussion tradition that could create that kind of space for people to join together. And I had a little bit of envy. I felt envy of these other cities, and I was thinking, how can I help to have in Buenos Aires such a space, such a place, or such a group that can bring people together in this way and corporate the community. So I understood that it was about percussion. I am a percussionist, so I always thought on doing percussion groups. But I knew that if I bring some percussion from other country, it could be great, maybe, but it would not be our culture. I could play in Buenos Aires some samba or some samba reggae or some candombe or some music from Cuba or from Africa, and it can be a fantastic experience, great exercise, but it's not about my culture and the people who is with me. So I knew that would not work. I thought on doing some tango group, but percussion tango group. At that moment I felt it was kind of artificial thinking, like not really organic. It's not organic for tango. Sometimes I see some producers doing from a commercial perspective, like, I put tango and electronics and jazz and pop singing, and they do this kind of Frankenstein. But for me, it's nothing to do with tango and nothing to do with jazz and so it may be fantastic music, but it's not really our music. It's this producer's mind. So at some point, I realized that improvisation can bring this feeling of who we are. If we are improvising, we can be who we are. We can play with all our references, all our influences, how you call it, all the things that you have listened through your life come into your improvisation in a natural way. So I know improvisation is a very good way to be honest, to be musically real you. But normally group improvisation tends to be very fun for the musicians who are playing and very boring for the people listening. And that's because it's not well composed. It comes from a very genuine place, but I have noticed that in all these trips in my life, all these traditions, all these rhythmic traditions are fantastically well composed. All these rhythms, they are balanced, they are synthetic, they don't have more notes than needed, and they don't have less notes than needed, and they have, you could be dancing that for hours without changing anything because it's so good. And that normally doesn't happen with group improvisation unless there is some way of composing that, of organizing that in some way. So at some point I understood this, that I could use signs to organize a group improvisation based on repetition to work with rhythm. And that could be a way to be who we are without playing a foreign tradition, and actually without playing any tradition, just taking everything we have. So I kind of envisioned this kind of event and this kind of group. I imagined it a large group, maybe a 20 people group or 15 people group. And I had actually tons of notes of rhythmic ideas about composing, how these traditions are composed, how these rhythms, samba, reggae, candombe, rumba, etc., are composed. And I was, during my ages of student and traveler, I was not really interested in the technique of the instruments. I was, but not so much. I was really interested on the composition aspect, how they are together, these parts, how are they so good? So I had these ideas, and then I just tried to put a sign for every idea. Some of these signs are kind of synthetic of my own way of seeing composition in the rhythmic aspects. But then when I started to write signs for this project, I started to imagine the music and to create signs that would help me to do was what I wanted in my imagination. So during 2 nights, actually it was at night, my wife was sleeping in the same bed, so I could not turn on the light. So I had this paper block in the side of the bed, and I imagined music, I imagined the sign, no light. Yeah, okay. So I touched, here is the paper, and I did the notes. So in these 2 nights, I came with about 70 signs of this system. In the morning, I had to understand what I had written in the last night. I was like, what did I say here? But then eventually I could. And these first 70, more or less, 70 signs were I would say, the core of this language. And with these signs, I imagined what kind of musicians should I call to make this group. And I noticed that some of the signs are very simple, very intuitive, and some others are really based on my own way of learning music, which was traditional notation of music. So many things come from traditional notation, and they require some conceptual knowledge, some traditional way of learning. So I understood I had to call these great drummers, great percussionists, but also well trained in the traditional way, people who could read and write music, which is not the most usual in percussionists in Argentina, because percussionists normally come from Afro-Cuban or Brazilian, or it's normal an oral tradition. Percussion, it has been that way for centuries. So the greatest percussionists not always know how to write. But I had to pick these ones, and we started rehearsing. This was in 2005. I called the first musician on this list, and I told him, well, we are going to start rehearsing on first Monday of March 2006. So it was like, this was in November, so it was like 4 or 5 months in advance, which for Argentina is absurd. People say like, you are telling me we are going to rehearse in 4 months? Maybe for you it's normal, but it's not normal in Argentina. And people were like, well, yeah, okay, why not? It's 4 months away, and the list of musicians was really impressive. For them, they wanted to participate because the other musicians were on the list, and because they knew me because of other groups I did before, Puente Celeste, other groups that became kind of well known in Buenos Aires. So we started rehearsing Mondays, of course, the day that musicians don't have anything else to do. We don't play gigs on Mondays, so it's a very good day to rehearse. We started rehearsing at my house once a week, and I called the musicians. Well, as I told you, this is going to be a group for dancing, improvised music, and I will conduct with some signs. And they were like, signs? Okay, we trust, but they didn't have really an idea, but they were open to try. So they started, as I normally do with new groups, I told them to just improvise. They started improvising, and after 5 minutes I thought, this is terrible, this is not going to work at all. And I stopped, and I was about to cry really, and thinking, okay, I have thought on this group that brings the people together, community, and also I had thought before that a tradition is local, but this was not a tradition. If it worked, it was anyways a game of science somehow, but not a rhythm. So if it worked, it could work somewhere else in the world as well, just like sports, like football. It's a rule, it's a set of rules, and everybody can play, and every team in every country play in a different way, but they can play together because the rules are the same. So I imagined all that, but in those 5 minutes of improvisation, I thought, oh, all that destroyed. Nothing of that is going to happen, because it's not even good to start. But then I forgot that my beginning of this was to think in cycles, to think in circles, and to ask the musicians to repeat all what they do. So it is improvisation. I told them to improvise, but I didn't tell them to repeat what they improvise. Improvise one bar or one phrase and then repeat it exactly alike, and then with the signs we will make changes, but not with your own will. We will organize this improvisation through these signs. So you improvise and repeat. And then I told that to the musicians, and in just this moment it started to work very well. And I was like, okay, maybe it's not over yet. So we rehearsed it for 2 or 3 months, and of course they were professional musicians, expensive musicians, but I was not paying them. They were trusting on me, which was very, very lovely in their part. But I understood it was going to finish. Like I could not have these people rehearsing for 1 whole year without paying them, because they need to work. It's their work. So I figured it out that we needed to do open rehearsals, charging some small amount of money to the people to see a rehearsal, actually. But as I thought, after 3 months we were good enough for making people dance, maybe not great, but at least it was danceable. I thought people may enjoy the rehearsal anyways, and I found this place that was a friend of mine, really a student of mine. I was teaching mbira, this instrument I played on the beginning, A student of mine told me that he was working on a place that was about to open, enormous place. He knew my older projects. He knew that I was really into doing big things. I did many big and strange things before. So he asked me to check the place, and I thought this is the perfect place. It's an open, square kind of public place, but closed, and many different halls, small and bigger and really big halls. So we could start in a small hall, and then when we grow up, we go to a bigger hall, and then to the open air space that they have, which is it was my main goal, to go to this kind of a square, like a open air. So we started doing these open rehearsals on Monday, because that was our rehearsal day, and people started to come. Of course, we did some production with some normal things for promoting it, but promoting a rehearsal. So you can come to a rehearsal and a party, a rehearsal and a party at the same time. So we actually rehearsed it. We stopped the playing. I stopped to talk to the musicians. I talked the new signs every week. But after we started with 300 people or 350 people, after 7 or 8 months, there were like 1,000 people dancing there every Monday. So, oh, this actually is working. And after not much more, like maybe 1 year, we were playing for 2,000 people or even 3,000 and more. I shouldn't say it, but we played for more people than we should have in that place. But so it became an enormous success in Buenos Aires, a group that plays for 3,000, 2,000 people every Monday in the year, actually, without stopping for holidays or anything. So after not much, there were like millions of people that had seen this group, which was called La Bomba de Tiempo. And it is called La Bomba de Tiempo. It is still playing every Monday in the same place. So lots of people started to ask to learn the language or to be part of the group. They thought it was like a jam. I say, well, not really. We are training and we are... But we could teach the language, of course. So we created the first school. I created a school called La Bombería, then a different one called Serba, and then a different one called Serbs, to teach this language. And students started to make their own groups and to teach. And their students started to make their own groups and teaching. And so it started to spread around the world, actually, and now it's about in 25 countries. With I know about 140 groups, but I know there are many more because those are only the groups I know. And every day I get some news. Hey, but there is a group there. Oh, I didn't know. And I know now that it's out of control completely. So it became a language, really, and a game that could be played everywhere. Very similar to what I kind of dreamed one day, but it's real. And also it became very evident that it's a very good tool for teaching, for not only for professional musicians playing on stage, but really to teach kids, to also to conduct groups in therapies, musical therapy or therapy for addictions or autism therapy, and many others. Students of myself and other people are using it for those purposes. And that was really a surprise to me. I didn't expect that to happen. If I have to be honest, I could imagine that this could spread in the globe if it worked at all, but not that it was going to be a tool for teaching and for therapy. So I understood that it was needed a dictionary of the language to really keep it being a language that we could understand and we could use to really understand each other, to play together no matter where we come from. So I created the first manual, the manual or the dictionary of this language in English and Spanish. I'm afraid that I don't have any here because it's over, the first edition, and second edition is not ready yet. But I am sure Agustin has, or Sysmo people have one or two there. Or in any case, you can make a copy and don't tell me anything. So now that's what happened, and as you know, Agustin came to Buenos Aires and saw the same group, and this is what happened here. And I am very pleased to say that this is probably the place where it's growing with more quality and a very, very great musicianship involved into teaching and into playing by the Sysmo players. So I'm always very happy to come here to work with them and to share this system with everybody. So this is more or less the story until now. I still conduct the school, the SERPs in Buenos Aires. I travel a lot now to all these different countries to work with the groups that are already using the language, to also help them to spread the game. And I created with other people, of course, an association, a world association called ARPS, Association of Rhythm and Percussion with Signs, which has its center in Buenos Aires, but it's just a world association to interconnect the people that is using the language to make good things for everybody and to develop it and order in the way of taking care of the language that goes in a good way, consensuated way. So this is more or less where we are now. It's no bad for 2 nights.
Pour un spectacle jeune public en devenir, nous avons un micro-mousse jetable. Et donc, je vais en profiter du coup pour introduire un petit moment qui a pour objectif de vous laisser poser des questions à Santiago au sujet de tout ce qu'il a raconté là, de ce que c'est que son langage, de la vie qu'il mène, des contextes dans lesquels il est appliqué, quoi que ce soit. On ouvre ce petit moment d'échange avec Santiago et je vais donc lancer le micro-mousse plus ou moins vers la personne qui le souhaitera. Si ça n'arrive pas là, vous le repassez, etc. Puis à partir d'un moment, normalement, je ne devrais plus devoir le gérer. Il ira à la prochaine personne qui voudra poser une question. Donc, est-ce que quelqu'un veut s'adresser à Santiago ? Il est très mou, vraiment très mou, donc il n'y a pas trop de danger pour le premier lancé.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for the great, inspiring story. It's always a great story to learn how someone started with a dream, and the dream actually, the reality is always more extraordinary than dreams. Yeah. And I think it's a wonderful story. Just to have the appetite to learn more, I'm wondering what is maybe the main insight or the main lesson that you learned from this story, or if I can be more specific, if you were traveling in other countries and you have the kind of relationship with different groups, What did you learn from this relationship with the other groups, or if there is a specific story from a specific group that you have learned? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, there are different, very different. Sometimes, yes, as I am traveling and meeting all these different groups, I can see different approaches. Some of them are very, let's say, purists, like of the system, like they don't want to make any mistake. So my role there is just, hey, like, do your music anyways. I think, like in that sense, mostly I would say like in the musical aspect, I think it's important, tension. Tension is important for music and I think for life. So it's not always about being relaxed, but to have this movement between relax and tension to move somewhere else to get relaxed and then move again to get new tension. That's a little bit the story of everybody's life, I think. And in my life, like for instance, after 8 years of conducting this group, La Bomba de Tiempo, I had to quit the group, which I am not playing anymore now in La Bomba, because I needed some new, it's like, okay, I could sit here and die, but that's not life for me. I need to create new things, so I started again with different groups and other things that are not the subject of this talk, but and so sometimes I see groups that are a little bit like they are trying to do it right, and then my role is like to make them remember that it's about music and they don't have to obey a conductor, they have to create music and use a conductor and use this language to do music. So it's more difficult, of course, because it's not only, the responsibility then is in everyone. You have to do your music using this language, using this conductor, using the other musicians are in the group to do the music that you can hear in your mind while playing with them. So in other cases, it's just the opposite. They are trying to to create thousands of new signs that really don't say any new concept. It's just because they didn't study enough the language and they think they have to invent something that is already invented. And in that case, I try to tell them that if they invent their own signs to say the same things, it's wonderful, no problem with that, but they will lose the ability to communicate with other groups. And then it's their own game, which may be a fantastic game, but they are losing something that maybe they don't want to lose. So in those groups, it's just the opposite, like, okay, but let's start by learning what is already there. And then there are some other groups in which I don't have really almost anything to do. Just give my personal point of view as a musician. Yes, very well trained into this system because I created it, and many of the ideas come from my own way of understanding. So my training comes from really before the system into these ideas. But still, it's just sharing with colleagues, and after one or two visits, I start learning from them. I go to a place, I teach new things that I have been developing or working with people in Buenos Aires, but then I also learn from them new ways of using the signs, and then I take them to Buenos Aires and start to really work what I thought. The good part of it is that we learn from each other. And the example of this is Sysmo, actually. This group that every time I come here, I always take some new things home and I teach them to students. So maybe they should charge me, I think. Just kidding. So there are different kinds of groups, but I almost always notice that in every place the groups have something in common, of course, but also they have this idiosyncratic way of approaching, not necessarily on the instruments, not yet at least. I would love the groups to be more, at this point, more, how we say, courageous in the instrumentation, to go out of the example we created at the beginning with La Bomba de Tiempo. But still they are different in the way in which they approach. Some, as I said, some are very, like, you know, perfect, but maybe not so much energy or not so much tension involved. It's just about things done right. Others are more like that, but then sometimes they have this kind of energetic stage approach where they jump and they do acting and clown things and all kind of things. Some of them are very into the nerd things, like myself, like exchange meters and rhythms and things one with the other. Some others are just about dancing and having fun, and so I like very much that to notice all these differences, and I can notice them because they are using the same language and kind of the same game. I don't know if that was the question, but.
Est-ce que quelqu'un d'autre souhaite poser une question ou partager quelque chose?
Hello.
Hello.
Are you thinking of maybe organizing some kind of worldwide gathering for all the percussion bands that know rhythm with signs?
Of course. We should. We are now organizing the first Argentinian, we call it championship. I really was inspired by the football way of maybe not so loud. Thanks. I was inspired by this football thing because I realized it soon enough, actually before calling any musician for the first group, that it was like a game, like not really like a style of music or like a tradition of music, but really as a game that could create music. So when I understood that it was a group game, I immediately related with football also, because in my country and in Brazil, my neighbor country, all these escolas de samba or blocos afro, well, they happen in some way that it is related also with this football thing. They have their escola, their team, which is the team from that neighborhood, and it's different from the team from the other neighborhood. And the same thing happens with the escolas de samba and with the blocos afro in Bahia and the candombe in barrios in Montevideo, in Uruguay. So I related with that, and I thought, like, oh, it could happen someday that creates these championships, like a World Cup or things like that. And now we are creating the first Argentinian championship, which is, there are about 30 groups inscribed from different provinces. So it's a beginning, and I have received this question many times already, so I understand that everybody is like feeling it. So I think we probably can do not very far away the first world meeting, but it's probably going to be a meeting of groups, not a meeting of selections, which is a next step in which there are so many groups that could be a selection of some players of any group to create the national selection of players. But that's too far, maybe.
Quelqu'un souhaite prendre le micro-mousse? Voilà, ouais, ok.
Hi. First of all, thank you, Santiago, for sharing what you've shared tonight. If I may, I'd like to ask two questions, fairly different. Both are different. The first one is, I'm curious to know how the teaching of rhythm with signs works with children. That's one question, if you have any ideas about that. The second one is related to Ilan's question earlier. I don't really have the experience of seeing people of different musical traditions and cultures playing together based on that language. Perhaps you have witnessed it. Does it work? I wonder. I just wonder. Yeah.
The first one, does anybody of you work with children? With rhythm with signs? Maybe there is some person using it with children. I think one of the Sysmo players is, right? So maybe he can tell. Anyways, yeah, I know a lot of people using it with children and with great results. Of course, they don't use the whole language. They use maybe the first 15 signs, and they love it because it's non-verbal, so it's faster to make an agreement in this way while playing than just stopping and playing. Okay, you are going to play this, and then children just get completely unfocused very soon. I am not expert on children. I did some tries, but I realized that the system was good, but the teacher was not good. But some of the teachers in my team, they work regularly with children, and it's very good. Actually, now in one of the provinces in Argentina called Chubut, the teachers, the school teachers started to using the language just because they started to learn it and use it. And they proposed the state, the government, to include it as obligatory, mandatory class for music teachers for the whole province. And now it's officially an obligatory, how you say, mandatory subject for music teachers in that province in Argentina. This is kind of new, it's last year. So it's starting to become also very well known, the ability of the system for the teaching purposes with kids. And the other question was? Oh, I didn't do yet any concert or I didn't see any band specifically focused on having people from different countries, but many bands do. Not maybe like having one from China, one from India, one from Africa, one from Europe, one from South America. I haven't seen that yet. But I don't feel it's going to be anything special in terms of difficulty, because the concepts are, I think, very universal, just like a game. It's true that at the beginning I thought, before playing with La Bomba, before starting to play with this first group, I thought that it was going to, if it worked, it will work better in the places where there is no percussion tradition, like Buenos Aires. So I thought this may work in Buenos Aires, but if it works, it could work, let's say, in some countries in Europe, in New York, in places like, but not in Brazil. I thought probably in Brazil they don't need this because they have so many great traditions. But I was wrong, because there are many groups now in Brazil as well, and they like it as well. But I don't know if it will get as big as in places where there is not other chance of playing percussion with your own tradition. Yeah. Now, one thing is also interesting to me. The rhythm is about rhythm, but rhythm is present in popular music. I would say is the base of popular music everywhere, and not only percussion music. The rhythm is the base for popular music played with guitars, with wind instruments, with any kind of instruments, and with voices. So the same signs apply to any kind of instrument, melodic, harmonic instruments. Of course, there are some other signs that are about harmony and about melody in the system, that when playing with percussion, you just don't need those signs. But all the signs for percussion or for rhythm are usable with melodic instruments. So my step after this first group was to create La Grande, which is a group of melodic instruments: trombone, saxophone, guitar, bass, 2 drums, cello, etc. And this group is my actual group is playing every Tuesday now regularly for 4 years, every Tuesday, also for about 1,000 people, but with melodies. So we combine my compositions with this improvisation in a very different way every night, and it still works. And also now people using it with voices. I started doing vocal ensembles playing with this, and it was a surprise to me. I started little by little, but now I really love that way of playing, because everyone has a voice, everyone can sing and feel right. It feels so good to sing in tune with others and to be improvising with the voice. So we are offering 2 workshops to work with the system with the voice, open to everybody on the day 27.
Lundi 27 en soirée et mardi 28 en matinée, 3 heures, ça se trouve sur les flyers. Et Gwenaël va vous en retoucher un mot après, et on vous invite tous à venir expérimenter le rythme signé à la voix, sans instrument, voix et peut-être un peu de percussion corporelle.
Yeah, so we will work with the same system, but also we will add some harmonic signs to do that, melodic, harmonic, and it's really for me it was a surprise. It's like therapeutic to me.
Merci beaucoup, merci beaucoup Santiago. Thank you very much again.